Hope y'all had a great spring break. I had a very relaxing break. I spent it on the planet Noble, far across the galaxy, where I collected a few new stories to tell y'all. I bought a sci-fi book there on Planet Noble that I was planning to share with y'all today. But on Planet Noble, they like to get into some trickery. When I went to read the story that I bought, I found a different book had been put inside the wrong cover. The epic sci-fi book I had bought was really a horror fiction novel. And the only explanation I had was a single note: April Fools. Hey y'all, and welcome to Oblivion's Library. I'm Haley Straub, your local intergalactic traveler, wandering the galaxy collecting stories. When I first realized that I had been bamboozled and my sci-fi book had been switched out for a horror fiction, my first thought was, can I still put this on my podcast? I realized I could get away with telling y'all a scary story in October, so it worked out that this story you're about to hear could be the Halloween special. But the scheduling didn't work out. It's nowhere near Halloween now, if you can tell, but a friend of mine suggested making the Halloween special into the April Fool's broadcast. So, in honor of tomorrow, in case y'all forgot, early April Fools, today's story breaks away from my usual sci-fi fantasy genres into the increasingly popular genre of mascot horror. Now, please understand, when I say horror, I don't mean anything super scary, because I myself cannot handle watching scary movies or playing scary games. My knowledge of this genre is limited, but inspiration does strike when it does. This story was inspired by several indie horror games, but inspired does not mean based off of. I will be doing my own thing with these characters. If you can handle Five Nights at Freddy's or Stranger Things, you can definitely stomach this story. And the reason is because a lot of horror is visual. Monsters look scary. Dark hallways look scary. Gruesome things look scary. But if I say, envision a scary monster, I'm on the radio right now. I can't show you a scary monster. I'm just telling you about the scary monster. You're going to have to fill in the blanks and imagine a scary monster for me, and that means you guys, the listeners, have an impressive amount of control in the story that I'm about to tell you. You can make this story as terrifying or as chill as you desire. And of course, trigger warning for all the things generally associated with the mascot horror genre, including, but not limited to, kidnapping, suspense, jump scares, chase sequences, life or death moments, and one character death. Death by bite of 87. I mean mechanical robot malfunction. Yeah, that's definitely the cause of death. This story is owned and copyrighted by Haley Straub. This story is not affiliated with Taylor University and may not necessarily reflect the views of the institution. All stories on this podcast are PG and LTC friendly. Today's story is called TRINITHREE'S Tronics. And it starts with a woman named Lucretia Vault. Lucretia majored in engineering and had a love for robotics. Her dream was a theme park fully run by robots and animatronic mascots. She experimented with metal and circuits, eventually making fully independent animatronics, which she nicknamed Tronics for short. Her Tronics became her selling feature, and soon Lucretia had a full-fledged garden-themed amusement park called Flower Frenzy. It became one of the most popular tourist attractions in that part of the country, despite only one person working there, Lucretia. Lucretia made, repaired, and retired countless Tronics over the years. They became her closest friends and called her boss. And the more time she spent with her robotic creations, the more she detested the other people living in the world. Lucretia hid away in her labs and offices, disappearing from the public eye, and rarely appearing, even in her own park. As much as Lucretia loved her Tronics, they weren't easy to engage with. They weren't lifelike. If, that's a big if she were going to be doing anything ethically questionable, rule number 1 was don't let the public find out about it. So when she did discover a way to make her robots more lifelike, she didn't tell anyone how she did it. Any respectable theme park has its fair share of mysterious disappearances. Cops and conspiracy theorists arrived at the park to poke around and hang up missing posters. But the disappearances were few and far between, with nothing connecting them. And there was never enough evidence to prove Lucretia or Flower Frenzy was behind it. Lucretia made sure of that. The customers kept coming, complaints were kept to a minimum, and the Tronics and robotics did their job well. All was well and good in Flower Frights, until Lucretia herself went missing. It was 1 a.m. on April 1st, 2025, and Peyton stood outside Flower Frenzy Amusement Park. Carnival music blared, neon lights were blinking, and sound clips of cheers and characters talking radiated from behind the locked gate. But behind Peyton, the parking lot was almost empty, and the night was dark. "I always hated this park," she whispered, "even when I was a kid." Behind her, Akiva strapped on her tool belt and slammed the trunk door closed. "Well, it was your choice to come. It's not that bad. The scariness wears off. This park's one of our best customers, although they do prefer we do the repairs in the bleak hours of the morning so the guests don't interfere." If Akiva wasn't scared, then Peyton didn't need to be. Peyton saw Akiva as a kind of mentor. She was strong and level-headed and liked to take charge of things, which Peyton gladly let her do. Akiva approached the huge front gate. Rule number 1, never go to an amusement park with free-roaming animatronics by yourself at 1 a.m. That's just asking for something bad to happen. Rule number 2, if anything goes down, you're a primary witness. Akiva typed in a code on the gate's number pad, which opened the gate just wide enough to let them through. As Peyton slipped in, she had to wonder what exactly the giant gate was for, and what this park had to keep out, or keep in. Immediately inside the front gate was the main square. Since Flower Frenzy was a magical garden-themed park, it was decorated with shrubs, flowers, and statues of its token characters. Giant plastic flowers and climbing vines gave the place a childish, nostalgic kind of feel, a feeling that slipped into Peyton's uncanny valley. Sound clips beckoned visitors to try the various attractions, and signposts led the way along the cobblestone paths. Even past midnight, the park's lights and music were running full blast, as cheerfully as if it was the middle of the day. It wouldn't have been as unsettling if there were actual children here to enjoy it. In front of the girls was one of the park's main attractions, the Crazy Carousel, a huge double-decker carousel with its rows of ponies spinning in multiple directions at once. But Peyton noticed something unnatural moving on the carousel, and she tensed up as the thing climbed down toward them. "Oh, there's the girl of the hour!" Akiva exclaimed. The thing crept into the light, and Peyton was simultaneously intimidated and amazed. This was the main mascot of the park, an 8-foot-tall, robotic, female praying mantis. And from the posters and ads that Peyton had seen for this place, this thing's name was TRINITHREE. It looked so weird up close, and Peyton kept wondering how it worked, and who would trust such a huge and delicate machine to climb around at night on its own? "Welcome to Flower Frenzy Amusement Park. I'm TRINITHREE, and we're delighted you've chosen to spend the night with us." Sorry, that's the default message when I see a guest," the Tronic cheered in a mechanical voice. Her mouth didn't move accurately when she spoke, and Peyton guessed that in reality, TRINITHREE'S voice box was probably in her chest somewhere. "Good to see ya again, Trin." Akiva walked boldly up to the Tronic and tapped her arm lovingly. But she leaned away when TRINITHREE moved her claw arms to touch her. No thank you, TRINITHREE. No hugs, please." "Of course, Akiva. I know you don't like hugs." TRINITHREE sat on her haunches, as if she were chilling. "What brings you here tonight?" "Our repair shop got a call from Flower Frenzy earlier today," Akiva said. "It was an SOS. They said they couldn't reach the police and called the first number on speed dial. They didn't say who they were, only that they're trapped in the park's security room. It could have been your boss, so I figured I'd check it out. Oh, and Peyton's here too, to help." TRINITHREE tilted her head, mechanically staring at Peyton. "Interesting. I wasn't aware of this call. The only one allowed in the security room is the boss, and she didn't tell us she was trapped. I'll take you there. Oh, and if you see any other Tronics around, best to ignore them." The Tronic stood up and started off through the park, but Peyton wasn't convinced. "This doesn't feel right," she whispered to Akiva. "We should get out of here and come back in the morning." Akiva shook her head. "That boss we were talking about, that's Lucretia Vault, the owner of this place, and the builder of the Tronics, and the only human being working in this park. So either Lucretia's in trouble and needs our help, or one of her skeletons is finding its way out of her closet. Besides," Akiva rolled her eyes, "I've been doing repairs for Flower Frenzy for years now, and I've never met Lucretia face to face. I'd love to actually meet her." The area of the park they were walking through continued the flowery theme. A giant trellis extended over the path, arching over their heads, with plants like ivy and night phlox and red trumpet flowers growing on it. They continued in silence, staring around at the food stands and mini-games with robotic workers busy inside. Akiva watched a robot flip a burger and laughed. Isn't it cool, Peyton? The whole park keeps running at night since there's no human workers here. It's like a vampire playground. Any thoughts? Peyton shivered. The idea of being alone in a big place like this was unsettling, but the thought of not being alone was even scarier. The happy lights and music don't make up for the mysterious disappearances surrounding this place. Akiva shrugged. Hey, Trin, you know anything about that? Peyton's stomach lurched when she realized the Tronic could hear her. In front of her, TRINITHREE froze, her decorative wings raised and lowered. The entire Tronic went rigid, and sparks flew from TRINITHREE'S head as she randomly lost her footing. Akiva tensed. TRINITHREE, talk to me, girl. What's up? TRINITHREE turned her head full round to look back at them. Her eyes were glowing a dangerous shade of red. Peyton's stomach dropped. What was happening? It is park policy not to discuss mysterious disappearances with guests, TRINITHREE hissed, her mechanical voice warped and strange. Peyton, get out of here right now, Akiva whispered. I mean it, run and hide. As Peyton registered what was happening, TRINITHREE knelt low to the ground, her front claw arms pressed together, and Peyton realized how reminiscent it was of a real praying mantis in their hunting pose. When Peyton took a step back, TRINITHREE roared, springing her claw arms forward. But Akiva stood her ground. With one hand, she grabbed a heavy wrench from her tool belt and smacked TRINITHREE in the head. The Tronic was knocked completely off her feet and rolled to a stop on the ground, roaring and flailing her limbs. Peyton, go! Akiva turned back to the growling Tronic and prepared to hit her again. Peyton didn't wait around and bolted back the way they'd come. Her heart pounded in her throat as she forced herself to run faster and faster. In the distance, she heard TRINITHREE roaring. What was going on? Why was TRINITHREE crazy all of a sudden? Was Akiva going to be all right? Peyton ignored all her questions. She only had one goal: get out of this park. But as Peyton ran back along the road, she noticed a shadow following her. Something was stalking her from on top of the food stands, something unnatural. It wasn't TRINITHREE, but it was hard to see, and it was extremely agile all the same, and as Peyton slowed to a stop, the thing stalking her jumped down into her path. Oh, come on! Are we done running already? I love running! The thing cheered, jumping and clapping its hands. Peyton couldn't believe her eyes. It was another Tronic, this one closer to her height, but this one didn't look threatening. What are you? Peyton demanded. The Tronic spun around and bowed. The name's Killjoy, protector of Flower Frenzy. He was a bird, Peyton realized, and while he was mostly made of metal, he was completely covered in black and white feathers. He was very cartoony, with a beak that moved unevenly when he talked, and wings that doubled as hands, and he wore a teal scarf around his neck. Peyton was too desperate to be cautious. I just want to get out of here. Can you show me to the main gate? Sure thing, it's this way. Killjoy skipped down the path. This'll be fun. We'll have such a great time we won't have to worry about anything bad or scary. Not that there was anything bad or scary to begin with. I'm not corrupted in any way, and there's no problem here. Killjoy led Peyton back to the main square, where the hulking front gate sat firmly closed. Without hesitating, Peyton slammed her entire body weight into the gate, but it didn't budge. Around them, the park's lights all switched to red, and every robotic worker froze in their stands. Alarms started blaring, and Peyton stared, petrified, at the chaos around her that was too loud to think in. That's right, I forgot, the whole park is on lockdown, Killjoy jeered. Peyton barely kept herself from screaming. The bird's blue eyes were now glowing red as the lights around them. And lockdown means nothing gets out! So Killjoy could no longer be trusted. Peyton didn't think, she just took off running again. Behind her, Killjoy roared, his voice box glitching too much to make comprehensible speech, and Peyton heard the clicks of his metal feet on the pavement as he chased her. He was getting closer and closer. Peyton was no longer safe out in the open. She couldn't run forever. She needed to hide, and the first place her eyes landed on was the crazy carousel. Peyton jumped onto the carousel and wove between the rows of brightly painted horses and butterflies and insects. After waiting in the dark for a few minutes, the carousel's music picked up, and the ride groaned into action. It was for display, of course, but Peyton couldn't help but feel the joyful music was sickening right now. The crazy carousel had 3 rows of animals that went up and down, but the middle row went the opposite direction than the outer and inner. It was very disorienting, and Peyton couldn't tell which direction the gate was. She huddled down on the rough metal floor, constantly glancing around as she tried not to get dizzy. Every shadow and trick of the light made her flinch. But something heavy thudded on the carousel with her. Killjoy had found her, his eyes still red, and he squawked like the screech of a wild animal. Peyton scrambled to her feet and ran through the carousel, weaving between the rows of ponies, trying to lose Killjoy in the confusion. But he looped back around as she jumped between the moving parts, always keeping the rampant bird as far away as possible, but she knew this wasn't going to last. Peyton hid behind a carousel seat designed like a pony, and it clanked in her hand. She glanced up at the mechanics keeping the pony in place. She knew one thing being a mechanic, this ride seat was faulty, and she had an idea. The carousel rotated around and around and eventually put Peyton face to face with the savage Killjoy. He roared and pounced for her, but she dodged it, sending the animatronic crashing into the faulty pony seat. The pony's pull snapped off completely and separated from the carousel, sending it and Killjoy crashing into the fence and bushes that lined around it. Peyton was both terrified and relieved. She hopped off the carousel the next chance she got and walked until the dizziness wore off. The red lights and cheerful music only disoriented her further. The carousel had put her in front of another attraction. It was the queue for Flower Frenzy's Ferris wheel, designed to look like a ring of leaves and thorns with rosebud carriages. Like the carousel, the Ferris wheel was running, its carriage doors automatically opening and closing as they briefly touched the ground. Peyton paused to catch her breath. Her gut hurt from running so much, and her heart was going 1,000,000 miles an hour. She didn't go to amusement parks very often, but she was pretty sure the mascots weren't supposed to attack the guests. She didn't feel very amused right now. Where on earth was Akiva? With the exit locked, Peyton didn't know where to go. A mechanical laugh made Peyton look up, and her heart skipped a beat. Killjoy was back. He had found her. He screeched with joy, then bolted toward her, his red eyes flashing. Peyton was backed up against the Ferris wheel, with no energy to run or hide. But something sprung out from the shadows and grabbed the rampant blackbird. Peyton was shocked. It was TRINITHREE. The praying mantis had snatched the bird between her praying claws and held him off the ground. Killjoy squawked and kicked, but TRINITHREE was much bigger and stronger than him. She wrestled the bird down, managing to drag him away and toss him in a Ferris wheel carriage. The doors closed, and Killjoy paced around the cage as it began its rotation upwards. Peyton tried to steady herself as Akiva jogged toward her, her tool belt rattling on her hips. "Peyton, are you okay? Did Killjoy hurt you?" But Peyton wasn't ready to relax just yet. I think I'm okay, but TRINITHREE and Killjoy aren't. They've gone crazy." Peyton carefully eyed TRINITHREE towering over her, but the praying mantis's eyes were back to their normal shade of green, and she wasn't threatening them anymore. Akiva nodded, crouching on the ground to rest. "I checked over TRINITHREE after she calmed down. Turns out the Tronics in this park have a dangerous computer virus inside them, and it makes them violent toward visitors. I thought I fixed that thing years ago. How is it back again?" Peyton did not like the sound of that. "Great. I think I figured that much out from the trickery and the chasing." "You gotta watch the eyes," Akiva pointed out. "If the Tronics have red eyes, that's the sign of their antivirus program's working. They're likely crazy. But if the eyes are a different color, they're chill." As Peyton was processing this, Killjoy stepped out of his Ferris wheel carriage, retying the scarf around his neck. Peyton braced, but Killjoy was back now to his normal, cheerful self, his eyes blue. "Hey, Akiva! Good to see you!" He bounded over to Akiva, but she pushed him away. "No hugs, please. Thanks." Peyton eyed Killjoy nervously. "So he could go virus crazy at any moment and attack us? You can fix him, right, Akiva? You've worked here for a long time." Killjoy looked innocent enough now, but Peyton wasn't willing to forget what she'd endured at the carousel. "Fix?" Killjoy briefly looked terrified before he covered it up with a smile. "There's nothing to fix, no problem here. We'll just all have fun, right?" Akiva sighed. "Unfortunately, this computer virus takes a long time to locate and fix, and I don't have the right stuff to fix it right now. We're just going to have to live with the threat over our heads for tonight." For a moment, there was silence. Peyton was internally panicking. She didn't remember the last time she'd been so scared. She couldn't trust anyone or anything. Akiva grabbed her hand. "Come with me, girl. Let's talk." Akiva pulled Peyton into a Ferris wheel carriage where they sat opposite each other as the carriage began its upward rotation. Akiva cleared her throat. "Hey, Peyton, I know I haven't worked with you very much, but is there a reason you hate this place? Or if you do hate it so much, then why'd you volunteer to come with me this time?" Peyton swallowed hard. "This place, and the Tronics, they always put me on edge. Last time I came here, it was for a band trip in high school. There was this kid in my grade named Benji. He came in with the group, but he never came out." "What, like he died?" "We don't know. He just disappeared." Peyton shrugged. "They looked for him for a long time, but he was never found. And he's just one of the missing persons that have disappeared in this area. So when we got a call that someone was trapped in this park today, I thought..." She rubbed her face, her breath short and shaky. "I guess I wondered if he was still here. But if the police couldn't find anyone after 5 years, how could we? I didn't think this through, Akiva. This is too intense. I'm not used to scary situations like this. Any second, those Tronics could switch to violent mode and we might not have time to run. I don't want to die tonight." "Well, the park's locked down now, so we can't exactly leave." Akiva sighed sympathetically. "But that also means we can't back down. Someone at this park needs our help, and the Tronics aren't firing on all cylinders right now. I need your help, Peyton. Hey." Akiva put her hand on Peyton's shoulder, and Peyton met her eyes. "You could just hide here in the Ferris wheel and wait till morning, but I think you're tougher than you look. What'd he say? You up for an exciting night in an amusement park?" Peyton glanced down at TRINITHREE and Killjoy waiting on the ground below them, and she stared out at the park glowing with life in the dark night. She hated being in a state of stasis, constant fight or flight, always ready to run or hide. But she'd come here knowing the risks, and if Akiva was competent, Peyton could face her fears. Akiva smiled. "You got this, Peyton. We got this." And she hugged Peyton reassuringly. Peyton immediately felt better. Akiva was brawny and radiated heat. She was a great hugger. Peyton sniffed. "I thought you didn't like hugs." Akiva let go and waited for the doors to open on their carriage. "You kidding? Hugs are my love language. I love hugs. I just don't let the Tronics hug me. A person getting hugged by an animatronic, that's like asking for them to bite my head off. But don't tell them I said that." Akiva decided that their plan was to head straight for the source. Priority 1 was getting to the security room where someone was apparently trapped. But the security room was one of the secret areas that only Lucretia Vault was allowed in. According to TRINITHREE, to keep visitors from finding it, the security room was nestled inside another of the park's attractions, the corn maze. As they wandered through Flower Frenzy to the corn maze, Peyton watched TRINITHREE in front of her. "TRINITHREE'S terrifying, but she's such an incredible piece of engineering. Such a cool design and name and function." "You know why her name's TRINITHREE, right?" Killjoy walked beside her. "TRINITHREE was the first Tronic the boss ever made 30 years ago. Her name was meant to be Trinity, but her first rendition was faulty, so she was fixed up to a second version, and then later fixed up to how she is now. Trinity version 3, Trina-3. Peyton chuckled, and she decided to take a risk. "Hey, Killjoy, do you know anything about the mysterious disappearances around this park? My classmate Benji went missing here 5 years ago. Do you know anything about that?" Killjoy was pensive, fingering his scarf with his wing. "No," he snapped, "and it'd be best if you didn't ask any more." Peyton did not trust Killjoy at all, but she knew this bird was definitely hiding something. The group arrived at the corn maze, and Peyton immediately hated it. This maze guaranteed limited visibility, the last thing Peyton wanted in a park that was actively trying to kill her. She hesitated at the entrance. "I think it might be easier if we leave TRINITHREE and Killjoy out here. It would be less dangerous." But Killjoy's cheerful expression faltered. "No!" he cried. "Don't leave me here, please." Peyton had to double-take that this was still the same bird. His outgoing demeanor had completely faded. He had stopped putting on the kid-friendly bird mascot act. Akiva pointed out that the Tronics had the corn maze memorized to help the guests that got lost. So even though Peyton hated the idea, she followed Akiva, TRINITHREE, and Killjoy into the walls of plastic corn and sunflowers. Killjoy was unnaturally quiet, his blue eyes darting around. "You're scared," Peyton realized. Killjoy fidgeted with the feathers on his wing hands. "I get scared every time this virus shows up again. I've been managing to keep it together when there's kids around so far. Whenever the virus interferes during the day, I just try to cover it up. I thought if I pretended the problem didn't exist, it would eventually go away. But it hasn't. It's gotten worse and worse. And I'm scared what I could have done to you tonight if TRINITHREE hadn't stopped me." Peyton chuckled, hardly believing that she could relate to an animatronic bird. "I learned a long time ago not to be a fake-out. If you're scared, be scared. And if you're happy, be happy. And if you need help, you gotta ask for it." Killjoy walked slowly, putting distance between TRINITHREE and Akiva. "I did," he whispered. "I did ask for help. I called your repair shop. I'm the reason you're here." Peyton was so shocked she stopped walking. "You called us? Why'd you say you were trapped in the security room?" The bird whispered even quieter, and Peyton had to lean closer to him. "I am trapped in here. There's things I can't tell you because of this robot sensors. Peyton, this virus isn't a virus. When the Tronics go crazy, it's not of our choosing, but it is intentional. He was cut off by something landing in the path behind them. Another Tronic had arrived, this one as tall as TRINITHREE, but two-legged like Killjoy. This Tronic was part lion and part flower, with golden flower petals rotating around its lion-like head, and its eyes were red. "Oh, screw it, it's the gardener! Run!" Killjoy bolted around a corner, and Peyton scrambled to follow him. But Peyton didn't get very far before she realized the worst had come to pass. She'd lost track of Akiva and TRINITHREE. The flower lion chased them on 4 legs, easily maneuvering the corn maze while roaring incomprehensible speech. The Tronic slashed her sharp front claws, sawing off the plastic corn around her. Peyton screamed, but Killjoy squawked at the violent Tronic, and it scampered away into the maze. "That's Dandelion, gardener of Flower Frenzy," Killjoy explained as they raced through the corn blindly. "I haven't seen her all week. I guess she's been hiding in this maze the whole time, going crazy from the virus like us." "Lucky for us, the scaredy cats scare it off by loud noises. But there's nowhere to hide in here. Get out! Get out! Get away!" Killjoy tripped backwards and glitched, his eyes flipping to red. That meant virus crazed. Peyton didn't wait to double-check and took off again. It was easy to lose the crazy Tronics in the maze, but Peyton had no idea where she was going. Killjoy was on the fritz again, and Dandelion went on the hunt whenever she met Peyton's line of sight. Peyton only ran where she could see, with searchlights and speakers as her only source of direction. Peyton turned a corner and found herself face to face with Dandelion, the Tronic not more than 5 feet away from her. The yellow petals that made up her mane were bristled and alert. The gardener raised herself up on 2 legs, her red eyes staring down at the terrified Peyton. Dandelion's jaw was moving. She was trying to talk, and somehow Peyton understood part of it. "I can't hide from what's inside my head. Help me. She'll kill me." Peyton pressed against the corn, trying to imagine if a robotic lion could be tamed like a live one. "Are you stuck in here like Killjoy? Wait, who will kill you?" Elsewhere in the maze, there was a clanking sound. Peyton gasped as TRINITHREE leapt high into the air. She located Peyton and came crashing down on Dandelion's back. The praying mantis kept Dandelion distracted as Peyton slipped away, and she continued running blindly through the maze. After what felt like an eternity of close calls and frantic escaping, Peyton found a gap in the corn, where Akiva and a friendly Killjoy were waiting. They had found a trapdoor in the ground and pried it open. Inside, there was only a ladder going down into pitch black. "I don't like that," Peyton decided. But Akiva was determined. "I've spent 10 years fixing up this place for Lucretia Vault. I am not leaving until I set eyes on this lady." Akiva climbed down the ladder into the darkness, and Killjoy managed to follow. Peyton glanced around the cornfield, but didn't see any Tronics around her. She felt safe with the fact that they couldn't find her, they couldn't hurt her, and as Peyton climbed down the ladder, she closed the trapdoor over her head, locking TRINITHREE and Dandelion, whoever they were, outside. But Peyton was full of questions. The Tronics themselves, the robots built and working here, had raised the alarm. Killjoy and Dandelion knew more than they could say. Who were they afraid of? The ladder led down to a series of maintenance tunnels. They were full of pipes and electrical lines that dripped, sparked, and steamed suspiciously. The only light came from dim red emergency lights. The slightest movement echoed endlessly through the pipes. The only relief of light came from Killjoy's glowing blue eyes as he glanced around nervously. "It's this way." Akiva snapped on a flashlight and followed him through the dank tunnels. By the sheer scope of them, Peyton guessed they connected to everywhere in the park. After wandering the tunnels for a few minutes, stepping around damp spots in the concrete, they found an employees-only door. It put them in a cramped, concrete-walled security room, hardly bigger than an office. A wall of outdated security monitors overlooked everywhere in the park. Dandelion and TRINITHREE were visible on one screen, still stuck in the corn maze. But Peyton was more relieved over the signs of human life. A worn-out chair sat in front of the desk, which was cluttered with paper and wires. A microwave sat on a side table, and the room smelled like food. It was comforting to know that at some point, someone had been here. But Peyton was drawn to the corkboard on the wall opposite the security setup. The entire board was covered in missing persons posters. More than a dozen empty faces stared out of the shadowy room, and all the posters had one line in common: "Last seen in flower frenzy." They dated a year ago, 5 years ago, 12 years ago, 20 years ago, and most of the faces were crossed out with a red marker. Peyton swallowed hard. The Tronics may or may not know much about the disappearances, but someone definitely did. Peyton was reading through the names when Killjoy pressed his feathery wing hands against the wall. "Who is that? On that poster?" He pointed. "Peyton, tell me. It's too dark for me to read in here." Sadly, Peyton smoothed out the only poster with a familiar face. "That's my classmate Benji. It says he went missing here 5 years ago and was never found." The poster showed a high school-age boy with black hair and ice blue eyes. They had used his student ID photo. Peyton had never really known Benji that well, but had still felt his absence in the halls those last few weeks of high school. Akiva was grumpy. "Callers said they need our help when they're trapped in the security room, but no one's here. Hope they haven't gotten before we found them. I was really hoping it would be Lucretia Vault so I could meet her." But Killjoy hadn't left the corkboard of posters. He searched beneath the pieces of paper and turned a secret handle. The piece of wall that the corkboard was nailed to creaked open to a secret door. Behind it was a single flight of stairs descending into darkness. Akiva scoffed. "A secret room inside a secret room? How many secret rooms does one amusement park need? Where are you, Lucretia?" Akiva switched on her flashlight again, but it hardly made a dent in the damp darkness. Peyton imagined a number of terrifying things hiding in the bottom room and stood frozen in fear as Akiva ventured a few steps into the unknown. Killjoy watched Peyton, and then began taking off his teal scarf. "Whenever a kid is scared to go on a ride, I lend them my scarf. I tell them it's magic, and it makes them brave. I know you're too old for stuff like that, but take this anyway." Peyton froze as Killjoy gently wrapped the teal scarf around her neck. She didn't feel any braver, but the gesture was very kind, and she held the scarf tightly around her as she followed Killjoy into the dark staircase. At the end of the staircase, there was a bare-walled basement that smelled like fear. The large room was in a shambles full of chunky computers. Fiberglass and curtains hung from the dusty low ceiling, and light shone only from a singular light bulb. Stained cardboard cutouts of Flower Frenzy's discontinued characters were stacked against the walls. "Well, this room can't decide if it wants to be a storage room or a lab or a living space," Akiva said. Her foot hit something, and she picked up a mechanical claw arm identical to TRINITHREE'S. Similar dismembered or discontinued robot parts were strewn all over the floor. Killjoy made a noise that was half squawk, half scream. He ran up to a curtain and ripped it away. Behind the curtain, a boy sat at a computer, hastily typing and clicking. From his headphones and microphone, Peyton wondered if he was playing a video game, but his computer screen showed the exact same room that they were currently in. The boy moved his computer mouse, and simultaneously Killjoy moved his head. He clicked the keys, and Killjoy took a few steps. Then the boy took off his headphones and pushed away from his computer. Killjoy froze, completely lifeless. The blue lights inside his robotic eyes turned off. He was as motionless as a statue. Peyton put the pieces together. This boy controlled the Killjoy animatronic from the inside, being his motions, his voice, and when nobody was at the computer, Killjoy couldn't function. Akiva was not enjoying this. "Who are you, kid? Did you call us saying you were trapped? How long have you been down here?" Slowly, the boy turned until his face was fully in the light of Akiva's flashlight. He was sleep-deprived and half-starved, but Peyton still recognized his black hair and blue eyes. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. "Benji," she gasped. "You're alive! What are you doing down here? You were puppeting Killjoy? Why didn't you tell me?" Peyton was overjoyed and ran to hug Benji, but he was too busy panicking to return it. "Yes, I'm alive. I've been trapped here for 5 years piloting that awful bird, and I called you for help, but she caught me. She let you get here. She controls the virus that overrides our control on the Tronics. If it weren't for the microphone sensors, I could have told you this whole thing was a trap from the beginning." Slowly, Peyton realized what was going on. TRINITHREE, Killjoy, Dandelion, the other Tronics in this park that had been built and retired over the years, they were all controlled electronically, and they were all puppeted by the people that had mysteriously disappeared. Akiva was shocked. "I've been doing repairs for 10 years now. I never knew about this. I thought Lucretia was the one needing help." Benji was nervous, and it was uncomfortable how similar to Killjoy he acted naturally. "You think Lucretia needs your help in her own park? She built the Tronics with her own 2 hands. Why would she be trapped in her own park? I'm not the victim here, Peyton. I'm the bait. I called for help. She let you come, but she's never gonna let you leave." Peyton's heart skipped a beat. "What does Lucretia need us for?" "She needs more people to pilot the Tronics. I have to sit at my desk and run this awful bird thing all day, every day, and put on a happy show for the kids. And if we don't do it well enough, Lucretia threatens us, and then you go missing for real." "What do you mean?" Akiva demanded. Benji eyed the deactivated Killjoy Tronic and shuddered. "It means you two are about to be featured on the latest missing posters." Benji was exhausted and slumped back in his chair. "I'm sorry, it's my fault you're down here. I never should have called for help. Now none of us are getting out." Angrily, Akiva hit a static TV screen, causing the room's single light bulb to flicker. "Ugh, that evil woman! Getting away with stuff like this and then bringing me in to do her dirty work for her? The least she can do is meet me face to face. Hear this, Lucretia? I'm not going down without a fight." Her words echoed in the silence. "Oh, that won't be necessary," a voice whispered ominously. Peyton froze, glancing at every dark corner of the room, trying to pinpoint its location. But Benji's eyes widened, and he ran toward the staircase up to the security room, but he never made it past the first step. From the darkness on the stairs, TRINITHREE snatched Benji up in her claw arms like he was an insect and lifted him off the ground. Peyton screamed as Akiva rushed forward. "Bad girl, Trin! Drop him!" TRINITHREE bent her head around unnaturally to look at Akiva. "Okay." And TRINITHREE did drop Benji. Peyton didn't know if it was the way Benji was clamped in her praying arms or the way Benji landed on the stairs, but one of those ways had snapped his neck. Benji limply rolled down the rest of the stairs, and he didn't get up. TRINITHREE had braced herself on the staircase walls, out of the light, to stay hidden. She crept down now, bending her huge body to fit inside the small door. "I was afraid he'd blow my cover, but I guess every cloud has a silver lining." Peyton hid behind Akiva as TRINITHREE kicked Benji's body aside. The praying mantis's eyes were their normal shade of green, so she wasn't glitched, but she also wasn't acting normal. "What, nothing to say, Akiva?" For the first time tonight, Akiva was frozen. "Bad girl, Trin." Peyton was burning with anger, and the fear inside her turned to determination. "Benji was starving and traumatized. Dandelion was afraid of you. Trinithree, who are you really? Who's piloting this robot? In response, Trinithree walked over to a curtain and drew it back, revealing another computer. A woman with messy gray hair and skin pale as a vampire turned around to face them in her chair. Her overalls and undershirt were ripped and faded. Peyton looked at her, and someone dark and insane looked back. The woman moved her computer mouse, turning Trinithree's head to face Peyton and Akiva. I'm Lucretia Vault, owner of Flower Frenzy. You found me, yay. It's not like I set up my entire life so I didn't have to interact with people or anything. So Trinithree was Lucretia. Peyton was speechless, but Akiva was mad and stepped up to her. Lucretia Vault, nice to finally put a face to the name. I've only been getting to know your praying mantis alter ego for the past 10 years, and now I can finally ask you, why not do your own repairs yourself? Lucretia typed on her keyboard a bit, and the Trinithree Tronics swiftly jumped back into motion. Trinithree grabbed Akiva with her praying hands, holding her up off the ground. Akiva hit the Tronic with the wrench several times, but Trinithree was much bigger and overpowered her. She grabbed the wrench in her mouth and snapped it in half with her jaw. I hired you because I didn't want to do it, Lucretia deadpanned. And you're so good at doing the general repairs that I really didn't want to make you my next employee, but Benji ruined that for me. You know, I've always admired your bravery and spark. You'll make a great dandelion. Akiva thrashed in Trinithree's claws as Lucretia slowly stood up. She stabbed a syringe into Akiva's shoulder, and Akiva fell asleep. Trinithree carefully set her motionless body down on the ground. Peyton was hit with the realization that she was alone. She screamed and ran for the door, but as she hit the stairs, Trinithree's praying claw grabbed around her waist, and she was painfully yanked backwards and lifted up by the powerful machine. The scarf around Peyton's neck felt like it was getting tighter around her. She tried to punch and kick, but the Tronic was unaffected. In fact, Trinithree was frozen. Beside her, Lucretia boredly looked up at Peyton. Lucretia's eyes were wells of darkness, the sleep-deprived eyes that only geniuses or madmen had. And she seemed to enjoy the scene of Peyton held in the air, struggling and trying to breathe. You weren't supposed to show up here at all, Lucretia grunted as she fidgeted with another syringe. I thought it was just going to be Akiva by herself like usual, but this'll still work out. Seeing as how I just lost an employee who technically never existed, I'm gonna need someone to pilot Killjoy when we open in the morning. Welcome, Peyton, to your new job at Flower Frenzy Amusement Park. Lucretia stabbed the syringe into Peyton's leg, and the world went dark. That was the story, Trinithree'S Tronics. I hope y'all enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too scary. I tried to make it intimidating and interesting while not going too over the top, so let me know what you thought about that. Now let's go over the behind the scenes and the symbolism behind it. So basically, how mascot horror works is that it weaponizes nostalgia, and it makes the cheerful, safe, kid-friendly locations horrific instead. And the mascots that kids would normally find goofy takes on an entirely different vibe when you see them as an adult. The mascot horror franchise has gotten increasingly popular over the last decade, and this is my contribution. Most horror games are split into several chapters, with each chapter being a game of its own. I designed the story Trinithree'S Tronics in the same way, and the story you just heard was basically a compressed version of Chapter 1. In the full version of the story, Akiva doesn't even show up until after Peyton is captured, and the story involves running around, hiding from more Tronics than just the 3 that show up here, rescuing the people kidnapped in the park, and then eventually confronting Lucretia and getting her arrested and shutting down Flower Frenzy for good. But that's way too much to put in a short story here, so I decided to do something I've never done before on this series so far and end the story on a bad ending. The story's title, Trinithree'S Tronics, a nice alliteration there, implies that the Tronics belong to Trinithree. This isn't technically true until the plot twist at the end reveals that Lucretia, the boss, is piloting Trinithree. Lucretia owns the Tronics, so technically they are Trinithree's animatronics. So the theme of this story is varying responses to fear, with every character embodying a different response, and I'll explain as they appear in the story. The two main characters are Akiva and Peyton, and they are designed to be polar opposites. They are representations of the most basic reactions to fear, fight, or flight, and this is shown from the first time they encounter a violent Trinithree. Akiva grabs her wrench and fights back, while Peyton runs away. Peyton and Akiva arrive at Flower Frenzy Amusement Park. They encounter the title character, Trinithree the praying mantis, and when I thought of making the story take place in like a magical garden-themed amusement park, I wanted some garden-themed characters, and what better than one of the most iconic garden predators, a praying mantis. Unlike the rest of the characters, Trinithree doesn't really have a symbolism for fear, unless you want to say her and Lucretia represent fear itself. So Akiva introduces the reason she and Peyton are there. The repair shop got an SOS call from someone trapped in the park, and they're here to rescue them and see what needs fixing at the same time. It was actually Benji who made the call, and Lucretia doesn't know about it, which is why Trinithree has no idea why they're here. To distract them, Trinithree goes violent on them, and Akiva blames it on a computer virus that makes the Tronics go crazy, but this virus is actually put there purposefully by Lucretia to get rid of people that would blow her cover. So Peyton runs, and she runs into Killjoy, a bird animatronic piloted by the missing Benji. Killjoy's name has several meanings. First, he's named and modeled after a killdeer, which is a bird. Second, the term Killjoy means a person who ruins the good mood. And thirdly, his name uses the contradictory words kill and joy, which is meant to increase the tension of the story. Killjoy represents someone who, when they're confronted with fear, ignores it and hopes it goes away, which it usually doesn't. Killjoy is scared of Lucretia and tries to distract himself and tell himself he's happy, until he realizes he can't just ignore his fears, and he drops the whole child mascot plaything by the half point of the story. Killjoy goes crazy. He attacks Peyton, and she hides on the crazy carousel. I love when scary moments happen on carousels of all things, because carousels are very disorienting, with the ground moving in circles. It's just the right amount of intensity and adrenaline without it being actually life-threatening. Peyton escapes the carousel. Killjoy tries to follow her, but he is caught up by Trinithree. This is not only foreshadowing for when she does the exact same thing to Benji later, but it's also realistic because sometimes large praying mantises do attack birds in real life. The midpoint of the story is Peyton and Akiva having a private conversation in the Ferris wheel. Peyton admits what she's hiding. She knew Benji in high school and he went missing. And this takes the character goal, which was respond to whoever sent out the SOS, and it makes it personal to Peyton. Here, Akiva gives Peyton a choice. She can either stay in the Ferris wheel and be safe, or she can toughen up and be brave. And Peyton decides to be brave, marking a major change in her character. There's a moment here when Peyton hugs Akiva, and Akiva says that she loves hugs, she just doesn't let the Tronics hug her. And this is a reference to a lot of mascot horror games where bad things happen to people that get too close to the mascots. So Akiva has enough sense to survive a horror story, that's for sure. The next conversation is between Peyton and Killjoy, and Killjoy explains Trinithree's origins and why she's named that. In the original version of the story, there was a different reason why Trinithree had the name that she did. It tied into the story in a much bigger way, but it was way too complicated to fit into the short story, especially since the story was changed to make it shorter. So I changed her origin story to be that she is Trinity version 3. Peyton also asked Killjoy about Benji, even though she's literally talking to him right there. They enter the corn maze. I decided of all things a corn maze would be scary because of its limited visibility and the ability for scary things to hide right around corners, plus there's no way out. Peyton wants to leave the Tronics outside to be safe, but Killjoy drops his cheerful demeanor and begs to come with. He can no longer hide his fear, not when he knows Peyton is so close to figuring it out and saving him. And inside the maze, Killjoy reveals that he was the one who called them there because it was Benji, and he's about to reveal major spoilers when they're interrupted by Dandelion. Dandelion's original name that I had for her was Dandelioness, but that ended up being way too long to say. I didn't want to say that every time. She's based off the Mavericks from the Mega Man X video game series, which is not a horror game series to be fair. Dandelion is the only Tronic here that we don't really know who's piloting her or where they are. The story is too short to explain that, so I left that part out. She has the least amount of screen time in the story, but I still wanted her here to be a big threat in the maze section. Dandelion has only one line, and she says that she can't hide from what's inside her head. Dandelion represents hiding from your fears, as she stays hidden in the corn maze as a reaction to the virus and Lucretia. As soon as Dandelion says she'll kill me without specifying who, TRINITHREE attacks her. In the moment, it seems like TRINITHREE is rescuing Peyton, but in reality, it's Lucretia trying to silence Dandelion. The main characters climb down into the spooky maintenance tunnels under the park because, I don't know why, but that's an ongoing trend in horror games for some reason. I don't know why. They find a security office. The Five Nights at Freddy's video games has pretty much monopolized the whole security office thing, so in TRINITHREE'S Tronics, they don't stay there very long. But they do find a corkboard full of missing posters, serial killer-esque, with some posters crossed out to show that those kidnapped people have died in the past. Killjoy, aka Benji, sees the poster of himself and points it out, and here we get the first visual description of what Benji looks like. He has black hair and blue eyes. Sound familiar? That's exactly what Killjoy looks like, foreshadowing that they're the same person. Before they enter the final boss room, Killjoy gives Peyton his teal scarf, saying he gives it to kids that are feeling scared on rides. Not only is this comforting for Peyton, this represents passing the mantle. In the next few minutes, Benji will be dead and Peyton will be kidnapped, forced to pilot the animatronic in his place. Not only does Killjoy give her his scarf, he gives her his job and Tronic as well. The scarf could represent a noose around their neck. The gang enters the final boss room. It's revealed that Killjoy is Benji. It's also revealed that Lucretia, the boss, is the villain while also being TRINITHREE, and she's been doing some pretty awful things in the past 30 years. By the way, here, her name, Lucretia, means wealthy, and Vault means locked up tight, so her name fits her pretty well. There's two types of twist villains. There's the hidden twist and the unhidden twist. Lucretia here is an unhidden twist, which is when there's little hints and foreshadowing scattered throughout the story, so by the time she's revealed, it was pretty obvious to the audience that she's going to be the villain, because that's in another classic horror trope. The villain is usually the man behind the slaughter who builds the scary things and doesn't realize the negative ethical impact that they would have. Throughout the story, Akiva uses her wrench to fight back against the Tronics. Right at the end, TRINITHREE breaks the wrench in half, which takes away Akiva's way of fighting back. Lucretia mentions that Peyton will pilot Killjoy, while Akiva will pilot Dandelion. This implies Lucretia probably just killed whoever was piloting Dandelion earlier. Both Akiva and Peyton black out at the end, and the story gets a bad ending. Well, there you have it. That's TRINITHREE'S Tronics. If you didn't like the story, don't worry. This is my one and only story in the horror genre on this podcast. Glad I got that over with. Next week, we'll be back to some good old-fashioned sci-fi, and it's a story that I'm really excited about, so make sure to tune in. Don't forget to check out Oblivion's Library on Instagram for character sketches and information, and go to Oblivion's Library on YouTube for the full recordings of other stories. And of course, you can always listen right here on WTOR Radio, Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for listening. This is Oblivion's Library, signing off. Take care, y'all.